Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Tennyson, and it's my pleasure to present to you on the topic of a client O&M dashboard for the Scottish public sector using Microsoft 365 tools. Just a bit of background. As I said, I'm Ryan Tennyson. I work for Scottish Futures Trust. We've had the pleasure of presenting on 2 previous years with the BIM Coordinator Summit. And Scottish Futures Trust is a publicly government-funded organisation, obviously based in Scotland, and we have a team of over 17 work streams, and our vision is to deliver world-class infrastructure for the people of Scotland. We have 4 set values, and all our work stream outcomes, activities are all centred upon the national infrastructure priorities, which is on the right-hand side of those 3 circles, where our work is to support the enabling transition to net zero emissions, to build resilient and sustainable places, and also to drive inclusive economic growth, and obviously to provide infrastructure for the people of Scotland. As I said, within the work stream that I am involved with, we have led and managed the BIM programme since 2017 on behalf of Scottish Government. And that initially started off with supporting the adoption of BIM Level 2, which then migrated across to the supporting of the adoption of ISO 19650 parts 1 to 3 information management using BIM, and that transition to support clients moving to a digital way of specifying, delivering and managing information across the whole life cycle. We've actually just recently updated our BIM guidance portal to reflect our current work and that sort of transition. And within that, there is all our legacy information and resources, but also our latest resource, which is the Standard Information Management Plan, which I presented on last year. And you can go onto the website and have a look at that and make those resources available to yourselves. The Standard Information Management Plan was evolved by ourselves to support public sector clients in Scotland to be able to adopt the ISO 19650 standard, but really just to be able to focus on what information they needed for their projects, and also what asset information they need to manage those buildings at handover, and to be able to ask for that in a standardized way so that industry and their supply chain can respond accordingly. The resource was mandated on a schools programme, and as a result of that, it's now been adopted on 53 projects and growing, across over £2 billion worth of project value, and across, as you can see, a number of public sector authorities. But that push, or that pull from the client side, has just opened up the use of that resource now across non-educational portfolios of public sector funding and projects. And really, what the Information Management Plan has set out to do is to support. We've done lots of engagement with various working groups and clients as well to understand what their standard information requirements are, specific to certain themes, and that those themes of information requirements can be dropped into the plan. The right people can be assigned to deliver that. That information is then delivered. That information can be used to verify, validate specific outcomes. And on the slide at the moment, you can see that there's 3 specific areas that we initially have targeted around improving construction quality, the delivery from paper-based to digital O&Ms at handover, that information then can be stored in a structured way so that the clients and operators can then access that information and easily understand how safe and compliant their buildings are in operations. And really, this slide just demonstrates the structured approach and how that information has to be handed over on all the SIM projects. There's the adoption of a folder structure, a structured O&M manual, and an asset register, and all of those resources or deliverables are classified using Uniclass tables. That this information then is handed over to the client in that structured way, that document register and that asset register then can be kept up to date in the operational phase and the information swapped in and out of wherever the clients are storing that information on a system or a platform. And this has helped to address challenges around not just how information or assets or so forth is named on projects, but also how information is transferred from one, i.e. contractor, across to the client. Having this folder structure has helped mitigate the risks of doing that, or the difficulties of doing that from directly from one platform to another, where in a lot of instances metadata and document information gets lost in that translation. And as I said, so most of my work over the past 3 or 4 years has been supporting that schools program and those projects to deliver that information and handover. And as we started to look beyond that, we'll be thinking about the part 3 of the ISO standard and the operational phase and supporting clients to keep that information up to date. We started to do some consultation with local authorities in Scotland, and we realised that a lot of them really weren't prepared to receive that information and to keep it up to date. And as you can see on the screen, there's some challenges around that they just weren't digitally ready. They didn't have the technology or the skills available. There's little to no budget to host that or to purchase new platforms. And also the existing common data environments or document management systems that they may have had, or the CAFMs that may be in use to operate the buildings, they're not really being used to their full potential or not at all. So that led us to take a bit of a survey, a landscape sort of data capture of what on the schools program, what local authorities were actually using. And across the 50 projects, we found that on the document and data storage side on the left, most of them were not using anything. Some were more advanced than others, using Viewpoint, Autodesk, Construction Cloud, but a lot of them hadn't anything, and their aspiration was to move to SharePoint because it was a resource which they currently had within the organization, and they could adopt that at low cost. Then, in terms of how that information is accessed or connected to a CAFM, there was a mixed set of results where a lot of local authorities are just managing their portfolio estate using Windows Explorer and Excel spreadsheets. There's quite a lot using Concerto, Technology Forward, just 2 platforms, but they were disconnected from documents, and there was no way for that relationship. There was no relationship between documents and operation of the survey. So it was sort of having this intel and through those discussions led us to a point where we decided to grant fund the development of a product, a minimal viable product, using Microsoft 365 tools, predominantly using SharePoint as a backend, and some way I've been able to connect that to a way for clients and operators to access that information. And after a number of months of research and looking at typical handover information that was being delivered on the schools program, we got to this point. This slide sort of illustrates the decided relationship and structure of how we would approach this. It allowed us to have a structured approach, but also it was relational, but yet it was flexible, and it would allow clients to be able to keep, and owners to keep their information and documentation up to date during the operational phase. So on the left side, we've got SharePoint as that sort of directory where all the documents and data would go. We had Microsoft Lists, which would then start to pull some of that data out of the documentation within SharePoint and keep that in a sort of structured order. And then the use of an SQLite database to be able to export out some of the graphical information from the project models, both in 3D and 2D, and then use Power Automate to be able to connect that to a Power BI dashboard and to make that all available and presentable in a way that then through sort of simple management of a desktop license that could then be published more widely to both internal and external stakeholders that manage the building portfolio on behalf of that local authority or client. It was important that the solution could be, as I said, flexible, standardized, but also a plug and play. So from the delivery of the minimal viable product, it could be then ported in to various other local authorities at scale and at low cost be plugged in, and then they can start to onboard their information. And just to look at it in a bit more detail, the back-end storage was we took some sample 2D information, the 3D models, the handover documentation, structured that, and then, as I said, started to map that through into a Power Automate sequence, which would end up in the dashboard. And what was interesting was that the three documents on the right-hand side, the document transmittal register, the asset register, which is COBie based, and the master property directory, all became sort of vital components of that workflow, because they were essential to be updated and kept live in order for the documents to be refreshed within the directory and the Power BI dashboard then to follow sync. And so we had to spend quite a lot of time in understanding the role and function of those, and also standardizing a template that the contractors or the operators who are managing those buildings can share future documentation and data in a standardized way, in order for the power flow to keep going and the dashboard to keep live and current. So this is just an overview of how the document directory looks. As I said, this is an area within SharePoint where a document controller on the client side would just drop in the documents. This is linked to the transmittal sheet, and then there's a Power Flow or Automate sequence kicks in, and all the metadata gets pulled across from the transmittal sheet into this directory, which then is connected to the dashboard. So in the future, if documents get refreshed or added, they can just get dropped in here, and it's a transmittal sheet which is kept up to date. And interestingly, it's this space where we start to add additional metadata to those documents, such as an asset code, and the classification values, both at a product and system level. And it's this additional metadata which allows us to connect at a one-to-one level the asset with the COBie data, and also the graphical information on the dashboard. So then moving to the front display, we started to spend some time with stakeholders, and also some of the potential end users that were already within that local authority who we'd done some pilot funding with, to what the look and feel of a front end display would look like within Power BI. So as you can see, we initially done some sort of wireframes, and started to then connect that to the data sources within SharePoint and the lists, and then also started to look at some other extended functionalities within a simple document dashboard display. And it was through this iterative process and engagement with the end users within that local authority where we started to get these insights, not only in how they wanted to access or the steps to access the documents, but also and that was played out through going through various scenarios of who and when would use it and how they would use it, but also to understand in more detail the security concerns and restrictions that were already in place within that authority to share information either internally or externally, and also the requirements that would be needed once the dashboard was onboarded to their tenancy, of how a document control and management system would play out. So to support all of that, we have developed some guidance which other local authorities will be able to use going forward. But what was most interesting through the engagement with the asset management team within the authority was that the dashboard itself had to do more than just that particular project, that school that was being handed over. It had to be able to be working for them at an estate level, not just at that project level. Otherwise, there was no greater incentive to use that at scale. And also they wanted to be able to use it to look at statutory compliance reporting. So part of the user stakeholder sessions, we were able to identify more clearly about what users were going to access the dashboard and the sort of restrictions that would be in play with that. This diagram was developed to help inform how we would establish that using Microsoft Teams. So just moving on to the dashboard itself, and just to provide a demo of how where it sort of sits now and how it looks. The dashboard, as I said, is now operating at an estate level, and it has a 3-step process where you can search for a building, select an asset, and then look at the documentation. As part of that estate approach, we were able to onboard all the local authorities' property list and the types of properties, and you can search according to that. And then an external can then see where those buildings are located via the maps. The O&M tab is the hub of the dashboard, where we bring all the documentation together, and we bring all that COBie data within there. You can start to search by asset type, description, instance, and space. With it being connected to the property list, you can search for a particular building. So the pilot project was Neilston, which was a school which is being handed over. And you can see here, when you select the building, it flexes the data. You can see the amount of document spaces that are available. You can search by a system. For example, the emergency call system, that then flexes to the documents, the types, and the spaces of which those assets are installed within the building. And also the other example of a fire damper, you can search for that. Where is that located in the school? The instances of that, and then you can directly open the documentation within the Power BI dashboard itself. So a very simple way to be able to access that information for anybody, either within the organisation or who may be operating the buildings on the ground. We're able to use an SQLite bring in the 2D information. You can see here, again, not linked to the COBie information. So you can interrogate specific classrooms or spaces. You can then filter by the level. And then if need be, you can then zoom into those spaces in a bit more detail. Using the fire damper example again, you can click fire damper. It shows you what spaces those have been installed. So a very effective way for operators to understand if there's a fault within a building, or they're going out to do a service task, that they can see initially where that is before they have to go out physically on site. And then lastly, and this is still an area of development, we work closely with the asset management team to onboard all their suppliers that do all the maintenance tasks across their estate, what buildings they have, and also onboard the range of maintenance tasks. And so you can then start to filter by the tasks themselves, the status of those in terms of their statutory compliance values, and also you can flick between that and the maintenance task. See here what maintenance tasks are currently outstanding across a number of buildings or types of buildings. And then also you can click into a specific building and go to a report card, and that will give you an overview of the status of that. So as I said, this needs a bit more development, and we hope to engage other asset management teams into making this more usable, and we can report directly from that. So just to close out in terms of the work that we've done and the benefits that we have already discovered. So this is a resource which we, as I said, funded initially to support public sector local authorities to be able to receive and operate and maintain their information as well as their buildings. It can be deployed at low cost and scale with low resources. The upskilling to access and manage the dashboard is minimal, and using existing Microsoft resources. Most local authorities have it. There's immediate cost and time reductions through the information being centralized on SharePoint, and people be given direct access to that. You've got the ability then to onboard your existing property portfolio, documentation and data. It doesn't need to be 3D information or 2D information. If you've got health and safety files that are PDFs, you can onboard that quite easily, and it can be kept up to date then as the properties are maintained. And ultimately, this standardized information governance and management process can be adopted across many multiple public sector owners. So you get that consistency that's needed across the public sector estate. And in terms of development opportunities, well, we have 2 or 3 other public sector local authorities who are looking to roll it out. once the pilot has been fully implemented and tested. As part of that rollout, there's an agreement in place to sort of fund the development of the dashboard in other areas, and also to use that user group to have knowledge share and feedback. And there's been a request to look at the ability to capture and automate the statutory compliance verification. So if somebody's out on site, they've done a task, they can say that they've done it, and that can go back for approval and that being linked to the database. And then other future areas is to be able to integrate the smart system or asset data for analysis. So we're starting to look at the building performance or the system performance and how compliant that might be. And ultimately, again, at scale, this allows, because of the standard information governance process that's been adopted, and the way it's been reported is consistent. It opens up the opportunity for performance data and insights to be shared across multiple public sector organizations, so they can be able to share with each other how their estates are performing. So I hope that's been useful. It's just a quick sort of fly through of this work, and if you'd like to get in touch to discuss more, please do so via the email provided. Thank you very much.